Part 1, The Receipt That Didn't Belong. You can love someone and still not know them. I didn't believe that until I found the receipt. It was buried in the pocket of my wife's winter coat, the one she hadn't worn since last February. I was reaching in to check for gloves before tossing it in the wash when my fingers brushed a folded piece of paper. It was a hardware store receipt. Standard enough: screws, wood glue, a box of cabinet hinges. But the address at the bottom wasn't ours. Wasn't even near us. 217 Norwell Avenue. I stared at it for a long time. I tried to remember if we'd ever driven past that street. If she'd mentioned a friend, a project, anything. But there was nothing. When I asked her that evening, casually, lightly, she smiled and said, "Must have been someone else's coat pocket. Could have gotten mixed up at work. She works in publishing. Not hardware." She kissed my cheek. Changed the subject. And that should have been enough. Except it wasn't. Because something about the way she said it felt practiced. Her name is Lily. We've been married for 6 years. Lily's calm, thoughtful. She reads late into the night and writes little phrases in the margins of her books. She loves antique clocks and the sound of trains in the distance. There's a softness to her, the kind that made me feel safe in the beginning, like I could disappear into her and be still for once. We met at a train station, of all places. I was heading home after visiting my parents. She was sitting across from me on a bench, holding a cup of tea and crying. I didn't ask why. I just sat next to her and offered her half my sandwich. We didn't speak for a while. But that silence turned into something solid. Or so I thought. 2 days after the receipt incident, she mentioned staying late for a staff planning session. I nodded, pretending to believe her. Pretending the doubt hadn't started growing like ivy under my ribs. When she left, I waited 15 minutes. Then I got in the car and typed 217 Norwell Avenue into the GPS. It was 37 minutes away. Past the edge of the city. A neighborhood I'd never seen. I told myself I wouldn't get out of the car. I told myself this was about trust. Closure. But when I got there, and saw her car parked in the driveway of a small white cottage, I turned off the engine and waited. I watched her step out of the house 15 minutes later. She locked the door. Carefully. Like it mattered. She didn't look around. She got in her car and drove away. And I sat there, staring at a house I'd never seen before. That my wife had the key to. Part 2, The House That Wasn't Ours. I waited until her car disappeared from view. Then I got out. I didn't know what I was expecting, a for sale sign, a friend's house she'd forgotten to mention, maybe some benign explanation I could use to tell myself I hadn't just crossed a line. But there was no sign. No name on the mailbox. Just the number, 217. And a keyhole still warm from her hands. I walked around the house once, slow, careful not to be seen. The blinds were closed. The yard was neat but untouched, no toys, no bikes, no sign of kids. The air smelled like pine and distance. It looked lived in. But not by us. I didn't go inside. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I wasn't ready for what might be waiting on the other side of that door. Not yet. Instead, I drove home, gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands hurt. She came in later than usual. Smiling like nothing had changed. She kicked off her shoes, poured herself a glass of water, kissed my temple as she passed. "How was your meeting?" I asked, watching her carefully. "Long," she said. "Boring. I'll spare you the details." And she meant it. She didn't offer anything more. That night, I lay awake beside her, listening to the sound of her breathing. Soft. Steady. Familiar. And I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. There was a version of Lily I didn't know. And she had a whole other life, one I was never invited into. The next morning, I made up an excuse to leave early. Said I had errands, but I drove straight back to the house. Parked a few houses down. Walked up the path. Listened. It was silent. I tried the door. Locked. I circled back toward the back of the property, around the trees, past the little shed behind the fence. And there, behind a loose panel on the shed wall, I found a small key safe. Like the kind realtors use. 4 digits. 4 chances. I tried our anniversary first. Didn't work. Then her birthday. Then mine. Nothing. I almost gave up. Then I tried the number from the mailbox. 0217. It clicked. The key was inside. I stood at the front door again, heart pounding, fingers shaking. And then I opened it. Part 3, what was inside? The smell hit me first. Not dust or mildew, like I expected, but something softer. Lavender. Old wood. Warm air. The house wasn't empty. It wasn't abandoned. It was kept. The front room had a small couch, a woven rug, and a lamp with one of those yellowed shades people keep for sentiment, not style. There was a teacup on the end table. Still faintly stained. A book lay open on the armrest, a novel I knew Lily had read years ago. Same edition. Same worn spine. I stepped further in. The walls were lined with photographs, but not the kind I'd seen in our home. These were older. Personal. Candid. One of Lily, younger, hair longer, sitting on a dock with her feet in the water. Another of her laughing, caught mid-motion, looking at someone off camera. I couldn't see who. Then I saw it. A framed photo on the mantel. Lily. And a child. The boy looked about 6. Maybe 7. Light brown hair, green eyes that mirrored hers. They were sitting on the porch steps of this very house, the same porch I had just walked across. My mouth went dry. She had told me once, only once, that she'd had a miscarriage in her 20s. That she wasn't sure if motherhood was for her after that. She never mentioned a son. I took a step back. Then another. A part of me wanted to leave. To erase what I'd seen, pretend it was something else, a cousin, a godson, someone else's memory. But deep down, I knew. This house wasn't just hers. It was theirs. I found a small desk in the next room. Drawers half open. Inside, notebooks. Journals. Letters. One was dated just 3 weeks ago. It began. I can't keep lying to him. He's good. He's kind. And he deserves the whole story. But every time I try, I hear your voice instead. I see your face. I wonder if I made the wrong choice. My knees gave out and I sat on the edge of the couch, the letter still trembling in my hands. She wasn't just hiding a house. She was hiding a past life. A child. And maybe, a family. I left without touching anything else. Locked the door behind me. Drove home in silence. When she walked in that evening, same soft smile, same gentle kiss, I looked her in the eyes and said, I know about Norwell. Her face drained of color. Then she sat down and whispered. I was going to tell you. But I didn't know how to say I had a son. Part 4, Her Life Before Me. The room was dead silent after she said it. I didn't know how to say I had a son. There was no dramatic gasp. No outburst. Just the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I stood there, frozen. I wasn't even sure what emotion was surfacing first, betrayal. Shock. Grief? Finally, I spoke. Is he alive? She nodded. Where is he? Not here, she whispered. He lives with my mother. 2 towns away. I felt the floor shift under me, like my body was present but my mind was trying to escape through the walls. Why? I asked. Why would you lie to me about something so enormous? She folded her hands in her lap and looked down. Because I didn't want you to see me as a mother who left. I didn't answer. I couldn't. So she continued, quietly, shakily. His name is Caleb. He's 11. His father wasn't someone I wanted around him. It ended badly. Violently. My mother offered to take him in until I could get my life in order. And I meant to go back. I did. But I met you. And suddenly I had something good, something safe. And I was afraid if I brought all of it with me, I'd ruin it. You let me believe you'd never had a child, I said. You looked me in the eye and let me build a life with you. Around a lie. I didn't think I was lying, she said. I thought I was, postponing the truth. The words twisted in me. Postponing the truth. As if it had an expiration date. As if there was ever going to be a good time to drop that kind of weight. I found the pictures, I told her. I found the letters. You still go there, don't you? To that house. Yes, she said without hesitation. Once a week. Sometimes twice. When I can't stand how much I've compartmentalized him. When I miss him more than I can explain. I stay for a few hours. Read to him. Leave him notes. We talk on the phone sometimes, but it's not the same. I asked her the question I was most afraid of. Does he know about me? She looked up at me then. Eyes full of something I couldn't name. No. That was the moment the distance between us became real. A crack. Wide. Irreversible. She hadn't just kept her son from me, she'd kept me from him. Not out of hate. Not even out of shame. But because somewhere deep down, she'd decided I wasn't part of that story. And that broke something I didn't know could break. I need space, I said. Time to think. She nodded. Quiet. Understanding. Not defensive. She didn't try to stop me. I packed a bag. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't sleep in a house where the walls still echoed with a life I'd never been told about. As I opened the door to leave, she said softly. There's something else you don't know. I stopped. Hand on the doorknob. Heart clenched. I turned back slowly. What? Her voice was a whisper now. His father, he never disappeared. He's been watching us. For years. Part 5, The Man in the Distance. I stood there, fingers still wrapped around the doorknob. Watching us? I repeated. She nodded, barely. Not always. But often enough that I feel him. Outside the Norwell house. Sometimes parked down the street. Sometimes standing at the edge of the trees. He never speaks. Never approaches. Just watches. I let go of the door slowly, the adrenaline suddenly making my hands shake. And you never told me? I didn't want to scare you, she said. Or Caleb. But you let him stay out there? Like some phantom? I filed reports. The police didn't take it seriously. Said he hadn't done anything. And what if he does? My voice wasn't raised, but it shook. I think he's waiting, she said. For something. Maybe for me to come back. Maybe for Caleb to ask the right questions. Or maybe for a chance to hurt you. She didn't answer. That night, I didn't go far. I found a small motel a few towns over and sat in the dark with a bottle of water and too many thoughts. I kept going over her words. The quiet way she'd said, "There's something else." As if she'd been rehearsing it for years. I thought about Caleb. His name echoed in my head like a second life I was never offered. The missed birthdays. The books I never read to him. The way he didn't even know my name. And I thought about the man, the father. The one who haunted the edges of Lily's life. If he was still out there, what was he capable of? The next morning, I drove back to Norwell. I didn't tell her. The house looked the same. Still. Too still. I circled once, parked across the street, and waited. Nothing. No sign of Lily. No sign of the boy. And then, a car pulled up. Not hers. A black sedan. Tinted windows. It parked a few houses down, engine still running. I watched as a man stepped out. Thin. Mid-40s. Dark coat. He walked to the edge of the Norwell house property line, and just stood there. Facing it. Hands in pockets. I watched from inside my car, every muscle tight. I couldn't see his face clearly. But his posture, his stillness, matched Lily's description exactly. After 5 minutes, he turned and walked back to the car. He didn't look around. Didn't knock. Didn't even hesitate. Just left. That night, I called her. He was there, I said. I know, she replied quietly. He comes on Thursdays. You know his schedule? I try to. I paused. What does he want? She was silent for a long time before she answered. I think, he wants to be a father again. My heart dropped. And what about you? I asked. Do you want him back in Caleb's life? She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely audible. I don't know if I ever let him leave. Part 6, the past she never buried. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, that part had come and gone, but because I realized I was in love with a woman who had never stopped looking backward. And maybe, she couldn't. The next morning, I called her again. I need to see Caleb, I said. There was a long pause. Are you sure? No. But I need to. I drove to her mother's house that afternoon. A modest 2-story on a quiet street, ivy climbing one side, wind chimes on the porch. I felt like a stranger approaching a memory I'd never lived. Lily met me at the door. Her face was pale. But her eyes held something else this time, a quiet surrender. Like she was done hiding. He's in the backyard, she said. I walked through the house, past childhood photos I'd never seen, baby pictures, school portraits, handprints in paint. And then I saw him. Caleb. Sitting on the back steps, legs crossed, a book in his lap. He looked like her. Same eyes. Same posture. Same frown when he concentrated. I didn't approach. I couldn't. She joined me on the back patio. Close, but not touching. He knows you're my husband, she said softly. I told him this morning. And what did he say? He asked if you liked books. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I told him you read quietly, she added, and that's the best kind of reading. For the first time in days, I smiled. Later that night, back at the house, we sat in the kitchen with the lights low. She made tea the way she always did, strong, 2 sugars. We sat in silence for a long time. Then I asked the question I had been holding onto since Norwell. Why didn't you ever tell me the full truth? She looked at me for a long time before answering. Because the truth was never clean. I didn't want to hand you something that messy and ask you to hold it with me. That's not how love works, I said. I know that now. She stood and left the room for a moment. When she returned, she held a small box. She placed it in front of me. Inside were old photographs. Letters. Hospital bracelets. Ultrasound pictures. One was labeled, Cassis, 2012. I looked up. That's where Caleb was conceived, she said. And where his father changed. He wasn't always who he is now. In the beginning, he was gentle. He was magic. He made me believe in things. Until he didn't. Did you love him? I asked. I did, she said. So much that I ignored every red flag. I looked back down at the box. And me? I asked. She reached across the table. Her fingers touched mine, tentative, searching. You are the only man I've ever loved without fear. Part 7, The Line He Crossed. I stayed the night. Not because everything was fixed, but because I needed to believe it could be. We slept in the same bed again, a cautious closeness, the kind where your bodies touch only slightly, but it means more than words. I lay there listening to her breathe, wondering how many nights I'd slept beside her without realizing what she carried. The next morning, we made pancakes with Caleb. He was quiet, observant. He watched me like I was a new character introduced in the middle of a long book. He didn't smile much, but when he did, it was soft, sincere, and I could see Lily in it. By the end of breakfast, he asked if I wanted to play chess. We sat at the kitchen table. He beat me twice. I let him. Later that day, Lily asked if I would stay at Norwell that evening while she picked Caleb up from her mother's. She didn't want to leave the house empty. Not anymore. Something about the last week, the notes, the watching, the ghosts of her past, had rattled her more than she let on. I agreed. The house was still. The kind of quiet you don't trust. I sat in the front room with a book but barely turned the pages. I kept looking at the window. At the front porch. At the street beyond. And then, just after 7 p.m., I saw him. Standing at the edge of the trees. Still. Watching. I stood slowly, walked to the door, and stepped out onto the porch. He didn't move. Leo? I called. The man blinked. Then nodded. He took one step forward. Then another. He stopped at the bottom of the steps. Up close, I could see it now, this was the man from the photo, older, thinner, a little more hollow. I just want to talk, he said. I didn't respond. She was mine first, he added. You know that, right? I know you hurt her, I said. His eyes flickered. I didn't mean to. That's not how hurt works. He looked past me, toward the door. Is she here? No. He nodded again, slowly. She's different now. I don't even know who she is anymore. That's because she's free, I said. He looked down. Then back up at me. You think this is over? He asked, a bitter smile forming. I said nothing. He took one step back. Then said, ask her about what really happened the night she left. Ask her what she took from me. And then he was gone. Back into the trees. When Lily returned, I told her everything. She didn't look surprised. Or scared. Just, exhausted. I didn't want you to know that part, she said. What part? The night I left, he begged me not to go. He screamed. Threw things. And when I tried to leave, he blocked the door. I waited. I told him if he didn't let me go, I'd take something he loved. What did you mean? I asked. She hesitated. Then answered. Caleb. Part 8, What We Choose to Keep. We sat in silence after she said it. I told him if he didn't let me go, I'd take something he loved. Caleb. It rang in my ears like a confession, one she'd never planned to say out loud. I didn't mean it like a threat, she whispered. But in that moment, I think he heard it that way. I wasn't just leaving him. I was taking away the only piece of us that still existed. I tried to imagine it. The screaming. The chaos. The quiet, terrified child caught between two adults ripping at what little was left. I ran, she said. I got in the car with Caleb and drove. No plan. No destination. Just, away. I stayed with a friend for a few weeks. Then moved back in with my mother. I cut all contact. Changed my number. I just disappeared. And you never told him where Caleb was? I asked. She shook her head. No. I didn't think he deserved to know. I didn't trust him. And even now, she trailed off, unsure. But you still let him watch. I didn't let him, she said. I just couldn't stop him. That night, I sat with Caleb while Lily made tea. He asked me questions, simple ones. What was my favorite book? Did I like dogs? Did I ever play soccer? And then he asked. Were you mad at Mom? I looked at him, surprised by his clarity. A little, I said.